Hey everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do a book review of Sourcery, written by Terry Pratchett. This was first published in 1988. This is the 5th Discworld novel and the 3rd in the Rincewind character subseries. So first of all I will describe what the Discworld is, so you got a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about here. Then I'll do a synopsis and then talk about other things after. So Discworld, what is it? It is exactly as it sounds at first glance. It is indeed a world which is a very large, round, flat disc. The water literally flows off the edge, the cans fall off the edge of the world. This disc rests on the back of 4 very large elephants, and it gets slightly more strange because those 4 elephants stand on the back of a giant world turtle, which obviously swims through space, as you would expect a giant world turtle to do. Now this sounds strange and bizarre, and in many respects it is, but it works incredibly well for the Discworld, and frankly you get accustomed to this in seconds. It's not something you can consider most of the time, and it's not a major part of this particular book really. This is set in a more local area, so to speak. So for the synopsis, the book is starting with the character of Ipslaw the Red, who is a wizard, and he is a very powerful wizard, but he has done one unusual thing that most wizards don't do, and that is have children. Because wizards, if they have children, their power of the children can be amplified, and this can basically unbalance, frankly, the world. If too many children are born, their power all starts increasing, and indeed that is what Ipslaw the Red has done. He has an 8th son. The 8th son of an 8th son is a wizard, and the 8th son of a wizard is a sorcerer, whose magic is almost unbound and unthinkable by almost any wizard standards, which frankly is pretty remarkable. Ipslaw the Red knows at the start of the book, due to the fact that this is a privilege allowed to wizards, when he is going to die. So in the middle of a storm at the very start of the book, this is like within the first few chapters, or paragraphs in fact, he, upon his death, somehow manages to trick death as such, or that's how he likes to think of it, and he transfers his soul, or his essence, into the staff, which he gives his son. So he does indeed sort of delay death. For now, you can only delay death, you can never stop death, even in the Discworld. And this creates a whole series of chain events, which starts 10 years later when his son, called Coin, goes to the Unseen University in Ankh-Morpork. The Unseen University is the biggest and one of the most well-known, essentially, universities for magic on the Discworld. He goes there because obviously his father is guiding him through his spirit of his staff to take his, what he thinks is his rightful place as the Arch Chancellor of the university, because of course as the most powerful wizard on the entire Discworld, without any doubt, of course he should be the most prestigious role, obviously. So he goes there to take his role, and there's one major voice that does not want him to be the Arch-Chancellor, and that is the Arch-Chancellor's hat, which, being worn by many wizards over many years, has developed essentially a personality of its own. And that hat, essentially its magic hat, think of it for simplicity, does not want to be worn by Coin, and instead wants to escape Ankh-Morpork and try to find somebody more fitting to be worn by. And that is where the character of Rincewind, the failed wizard, comes into play, because he gets basically pulled into play when another character called Kanina, who is a thief, she steals the hat, bumps into Rincewind, and together they have to essentially escape the city and try to find the appropriate person that the hat wants them to find so it can be worn, and oppose sorcery. This presents a world of problems, both to them for Rincewind, who is a failed wizard and a coward in his own words. He's a professional character, however. He can escape and survive nearly anything he never thinks he can survive, but he somehow manages to just about scrape through, although he does have a fair few scars and such to prove that he's escaped in many cases. And but basically go from there to them escaping from Ankh-Morpork. They go to another area in the Discworld, which is actually very much sort of Arabic centric, and very much another Arabic speaking characters who's based on that world that we have, but twisted at a slightly strange angle. So it's like, oh yes, it's this element of, you know, this Arabic element, but not quite. It's twisted at a slightly strange angle. It's not reverted completely, it's just a slight angle, and as a result it's just really funny and amusing, and frankly the humour, which Pratchett is known for, comes through really well overall. So that's enough about the synopsis. Now I'll talk quickly about a few of the characters. The main one being Winston the Wizard. As I've said, he is a professional coward. He runs away from danger at all costs. Some characters, however, find this a very useful trait, because not all characters want to, you know, face danger head on. They prefer to escape and, you know, collect their thoughts and just live without that. And frankly, because Winston keeps running away from everything, he ends up keep landing in the middle of events and being quite often a tool that people use to help them escape. Because if he can escape, if you're with him, then you'll escape with him. So this keeps happening to him over the course of this book, and indeed other books. That is his role in things, and he plays it well. He's an interesting personality, and in this he's got an interesting other character along with him in the shape of Kinina, who is a thief. She's a female thief. She's not quite what you expect. I don't want to say too much about her because there's a few revelations to do with who she is in the book, but she's a very interesting thief and not what she appears. The other major character is of course the antagonist, Coin, who is a very young 10-year-old sorcerer, being guided or misguided, as you might think of it, by the spirit of his dad in the form of the staff that he carries. Now he thinks his role is to, you know, take over as our Chancellor, to rule, to lead. That's because he doesn't know any better, and this journey where he literally doesn't know any better because his dad is essentially fulfilling his dad's wishes, not his own. He's been misguided, he's following other dreams that are not his own, and he doesn't know any better. So it's a learning journey for him, because he's a young character, he doesn't know anything about the world, he's naive, and he's following somebody who is not naive. So this conflict of personality between him and the spirit of his dad is a very strange one, but one that actually really works out well, and frankly I really enjoy. The other major characters, or set of characters actually, is, I'm not going to name them individually, is the Unseen University Wizards. There are quite a few of them in this. Many of them are named and play fairly important roles, but they are very specific to the plot line of the book. They've all got various different personalities, but they're all very much positions of power and authority, and they either like Coin or against him in some cases, and this mix of characters creates a very interesting plot line in the university. And now I'll talk about the locations, because the first primary one is Ankh-Morpork, which is essentially Pratchett being very sarcastic on London, England. Everything that you can imagine about the stereotypes of London is here, just twisted and taken to very sarcastic levels. The Unseen University is again elements of other magic schools, magic establishments that have been in other books throughout the years, but again taken with a very large dose of sarcasm and tongue-in-cheek humour, and twisted around and done really well. They do indeed travel to other locations which are described really well, and the disc just works. It's a strange, bizarre world, but it works extremely well, and it's one that I personally love overall. So, as far as ideas or themes to the books go, one of the major ones is the idea of power. Specifically, obviously Coin is a sorcerer. He thinks it is his job to rule, just because he has more raw magical power than anybody else going. And the book essentially questions the fact that just because you have more power, obviously he's using magic as an example but related to the real world here, just because you have more power in some respect than other people, that does not necessarily mean you have the right to rule, or indeed you even should rule. Physical power and the ability to essentially hurt people and punish them if they don't essentially obey you, that isn't power, that isn't control, or at least it damn well shouldn't be, because there is more to leading people and than merely being able to essentially punish them if they don't do what you want them to do. And that's what the book is trying to, one of the many points the book is trying to say, and one that it's saying in its own very unique and very interesting way. The other thing is related to that, and that is changing systems, specifically of governments and control, because of course the Unseen University has an established system. Coin is thrown into the mix to change the system, and it's saying that the volatile situation that is essentially changing politics and changing political systems, left wing, right wing, and obviously a centrist view. This creates problems, and it's talking about it with a very interesting viewpoint, using obviously the wizards and magic as an example and a sort of fantasy setting, but it does talk about it really well and really interesting, and it's one that I don't want to say too much more about because it's a point that I think needs to be read about in the book and learn about yourself, but it's a really important one. And the other point that actually comes into play, it might not be quite obvious, but it certainly is, and that is nepotism. Basically the idea of somebody getting a role or job or position of power purely because of a relative. In this case obviously Coin becoming the Chancellor and the all powerful one just because his dad basically sort of forces the matter. And this creates problems, and this for everybody involved, and it essentially says, well, is nepotism and is having positions of power just because of who you are related to, is that a good idea? For the most part, no. So it's interesting and quite curious discussion to have. And with that said, that's pretty much it for this review. Overall, this is just a really fun, fast-paced book. It's got brilliant ideas in it, as Pratchett books always have. The world is mad and fun. Characters, again, work really well and are just enjoyable to read about. The plot, it's got some really interesting ideas. Among it, the ideas that I mentioned at the end there don't always come across immediately, because Pratchett does it in a very subtle way, I believe. At least I like to think he does. But sometimes he does things in a very obvious way. Lack of subtlety is also something that he does well. And that contrast between making a point with subtlety and making a point in a blatant hitting you over the head with a hammer method is an interesting contrast, and one that I love to explore, and indeed will keep exploring as I reread and read the Discord books. So with that said, that is it for this video. All my social media links as well as a link to the book can be found in the description box below. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.